story won the echoes in the walls. I've always hated living alone, but after my breakup I had no choice. My new apartment was cheap, old, and had a weird smell that never really went away. It was on the third floor of a run-down building that had seen better days. My first night there, I heard something odd. At first I thought it was just the usual creaks and groans of an old building settling, but this was different. It was like a faint whisper, just on the edge of hearing. "Hello," I called out, but there was no answer. I shrugged it off as my imagination and went to bed. The whispers continued every night. They seemed to come from the walls, low and unintelligible, like someone having a conversation just out of earshot. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just the pipes or the wind. But it got worse. Soon I could hear faint laughter, sobbing, and sometimes even screaming. It was driving me crazy. One night I had enough. I pressed my ear to the wall, straining to make out the words. "Help us," it seemed to say. My blood ran cold. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and started to break through the plaster. As the dust settled, I saw something that made my stomach churn. There, inside the wall, was a small, hollowed-out space. And inside I found a diary. The diary belonged to a woman named Emily, who had lived in my apartment years ago. Her last entries were frantic, talking about voices in the walls and shadows that moved on their own. She wrote about feeling watched and how she couldn't sleep or eat. The last entry ended abruptly. "They're coming for me. I have to hide." Chills ran down my spine. I decided to research Emily and found out she had vanished without a trace. No one had seen her since she wrote that last diary entry. My fear turned into determination. I had to find out what happened to her. I started tearing down more of the wall. As I pulled away the wooden beams, I found another hollow space. My heart pounded as I reached inside and pulled out a small, dusty box. Inside, there were old, faded photographs of Emily, but they weren't normal pictures. In each one, she looked more terrified, and in the background there were dark, shadowy figures. The last photo showed her standing in my apartment, her face a mask of horror, with the shadows closing in on her. Suddenly the lights flickered and went out. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to see. The whispers were louder now, more urgent. "Leave now," they said. But I couldn't. I had to know the truth. I tore down more of the wall, and that's when I saw it. A skeleton, curled up and clutching a crucifix. Emily. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. How did she get there? Why hadn't anyone found her? Then I felt it. Cold hands on my shoulders, a chilling breath on my neck. I turned, but no one was there. The shadows on the wall began to move, forming shapes, reaching out to me. I ran out of the apartment and never looked back. I moved in with a friend and tried to forget what I had seen. But the whispers followed me. No matter where I go, I can still hear them. They want me to join them, to become part of the wall. Story 2, The Unseen Roommate. When I moved into the old house, I was thrilled. The rent was cheap, and it was close to my new job. Sure, it was a little run down and had some quirks, but I could deal with that. The landlord mentioned something about the previous tenant leaving in a hurry, but I didn't think much of it. My first night there, I started unpacking my things when I heard a noise upstairs. It sounded like footsteps, but I was supposed to be alone. I grabbed a baseball bat and crept upstairs. Nothing. The rooms were empty. I figured it was just the house settling and went back to unpacking. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Doors would be open when I knew I had closed them. Items would go missing and then turn up in the weirdest places. One morning, I found all the chairs in the dining room stacked on top of the table. I laughed it off, thinking maybe I was just sleepwalking. Then I started seeing things. Out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure. It was always just for a second, but it was enough to make my heart race. One night, I woke up to find a figure standing at the foot of my bed. I screamed and turned on the light, but there was no one there. I called the landlord, who seemed reluctant to talk about the house's history. Finally, he admitted that the previous tenant, a guy named Mark, had claimed the house was haunted. Mark had left in the middle of the night and never came back. Determined to get to the bottom of things, I set up cameras around the house. For the first few nights, nothing happened. Then, on the fourth night, I caught something. The footage showed a shadowy figure moving through the rooms. It wasn't human. It was tall and thin, with elongated limbs and no face. I decided to do some research. I found out that the house had been owned by a family back in the 1920s. They had a son who was different. He was kept hidden away, never allowed to leave the house. When he grew older, he went mad and killed his family before hanging himself in the attic. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to confront whatever was haunting me. I went up to the attic with a flashlight and my baseball bat. The air was thick and musty, and I could feel eyes on me. As I moved the flashlight around, I saw a figure standing in the corner. It was the same shadowy figure from the footage. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure didn't move, but I heard a voice in my head. "This is my home. You don't belong here." I backed up, my heart pounding. "What do you want?" "Leave," the voice whispered. "Or join me." I ran out of the attic and out of the house. I packed my things and moved out the next day. I never went back, but sometimes late at night I can still hear the voice. Join me. Story 3: The Mirror's Reflection. I've always had a thing for old, antique shops. There's something fascinating about the history behind every object. So when I found a small, dusty mirror in a corner of an old shop, I had to have it. It was beautiful, with an ornate silver frame and a slight tarnish that only added to its charm. The shopkeeper seemed eager to get rid of it, selling it to me for a bargain price. I hung the mirror in my bedroom, admiring how it added a touch of elegance to the room. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed something strange. My reflection seemed off. It was subtle at first, just a flicker of movement that didn't match mine. I shook it off, thinking it was just my tired eyes playing tricks on me. But it got worse. Over the next few days, my reflection started acting more and more independently. It would smile when I wasn't smiling, tilt its head when I was perfectly still. It was creepy, but I convinced myself it was just my imagination. One night I woke up to find my reflection standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me. My heart raced as I sat up, but the figure in the mirror didn't move. It just stood there, grinning. I reached for the light, and as soon as the room was illuminated, the reflection snapped back to normal. I was sweating and my heart was pounding. I decided to cover the mirror with a sheet, hoping that would put an end to the nightmares. The next morning, the sheet was on the floor, and the mirror was uncovered. I decided to get rid of it. I took it back to the shop, but the shopkeeper refused to take it. "It's yours now," he said, his eyes filled with pity. Desperate, I took the mirror to a junkyard and smashed it into pieces. I thought that would be the end of it. But that night I woke up to find shards of the mirror scattered around my room. Each shard showed my reflection, all of them grinning. I couldn't take it anymore. I researched everything I could about the mirror and found out it once belonged to a woman who practiced dark magic. She used the mirror for her rituals, trapping souls within it. When she died, her spirit got trapped in the mirror, cursing anyone who owned it. I decided to confront the spirit. I gathered the shards and placed them in a circle, lighting candles around it. "What do you want from me?" I shouted. The reflections in the shards all turned to face me, their grins widening. "Join us," they whispered in unison. "No," I screamed. "I won't." The candles flickered, and the air grew cold. The reflections started to merge, forming a single, distorted image of the woman. "You can't escape," she hissed. "You're mine now." I grabbed a shard and held it up, refusing to back down. "I break the curse," I shouted. The woman's image laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "You can't break what you don't understand. The curse is you." With that, the shards shattered into dust, and the room went silent. I was alone, or so I thought. When I looked into a regular mirror, my reflection was still there, grinning at me. It never left. Everywhere I go, any mirror I look into, I see that same grin, mocking me, reminding me that I can never escape. The curse wasn't in the mirror, it was in me all along.